Hello, and welcome back to the Pure Nintendo podcast. This is your weekly dose of all things Nintendo. My name is Gemma, and joining me again this week, I have my excellent friend, I have Kirk. Welcome back, Kirk.
Hey,
Hi. We are back for another fun week of discussions, and we've got a lot to talk about again, but quite a bit of a follow-up from last week, actually, since we had that strange teaser about Emio. So we're going to talk about the follow-up trailer that was dropped during the week that kind of gives a lot more information about what Emio actually is. We're also going to celebrate an anniversary of one of last year's top games and some Link news and some games we're playing, of course, including TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and some upcoming releases as well. So, of course, the topic of the week, I guess, Emio. It was really fun to kind of talk about it last week because it was such a short teaser that really showed not a lot of information except that it was a horror based kind of game with a man with a paper bag on his head and a smiley face. Now we have a lot more information in the form of Famicom Detective Club, which is, gosh, a classic series from not even the NES, I think. This came from, what was it, like a disc? Was there a Nintendo disc system back in the day?
boy, I don't know. I thought it was an NES game, but you may be right.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought originally as well. And can you hear my dog barking by any chance?
I can.
Yes. Okay. Let me just
Our,
pause
our,
right
our
there.
recording is haunted.
Yes. Yes. So the trailer. What did you think of this? And are you excited by it, or were you kind of taken aback by what it ended up being in terms of this Famicom Detective Club?
I don't think I was taken aback by it. I guess with hindsight, I don't know that Nintendo would have pushed so heavily a game, from Bloober Team or a third party. Well, actually, who is developing this game? I didn't even see who the developer was. Um,
Mm.
but this announcement is the unveiling, I should say, is more in line with the type of game that we associate with Nintendo, and that they're going to push a little more than a straight on sort of like really high end horror game. um
Hmm.
I the fact that it's called Detective Club kind of makes me think it's not going to be scary at
Yeah.
all. The ideal of where we got a club together, it's like now it's a encyclopedia Brown kind of thing where we're going to solve some mysteries that unveil that it's not as scary. But of course it's coming out of Japan, so yeah, it's going to be straight on terror just with younger people. They do
Mm,
that and they do it very well.
they do, yeah.
um but I haven't played the other games in the series. I know that two of them were just recently remastered for the Switch.
Hmm.
I
Yes.
didn't dig into them too much. Maybe I should because I do like horror. But so yeah, we'll see. I'll wait until I probably it's one I would wait to see what kind of reaction it gets and see how it fares.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and so the two, I guess, revamped or remakes of the original games were in 2021 for the Switch. Were they separate titles released separately, or were they a collection for the Switch? Do we know?
Separate. I'm pretty sure they were
Separate.
separate.
Yeah, okay. And so the original games were on something called the Family Computer Disk System.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
different to the NES, right? That would
Where's Trevor?
Yeah,
Where's
I know.
Justin?
They would know this for sure. I guess they must have had some kind of add-on for it's a Famicom disk system. It was a peripheral for the Nintendo's Famicom, essentially, in Japan, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it was a disc-based game. And it was developed and published by Nintendo. Whether that's the case for the new one, I don't know. But the original ones were developed and published by Nintendo itself. So
Okay.
that's pretty cool. And yeah, the
That's
name Famicom Detective Club sounds much more child friendly than I suppose the content is, at least in this new
yeah,
one.
it's like it sounds like it's some kind of young adult sort of
Yeah.
setup. Oh, and you know what? I just looked it up, and I guess I was right and wrong. You can buy the two previous games in a collection,
Ah,
or you could get them individually.
cool. Yeah, okay. I don't know how we missed those because I didn't even, well, I don't know. I've forgotten at least. I don't, don't recall them being a thing, but maybe it just wasn't on my radar at the time. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I
that's very
think
cool.
they might have highlighted those at a previous direct too, I believe.
Yeah, maybe. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
2021, it's a long time ago. It's COVID times. Who knows, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was. And they're kind of classified also as visual novels, so there's a lot of reading going on
Yes.
here, investigating, all with a horror style to it. So, uh, I mean, to me, it sort of feels a little bit like maybe, I'm oversimplifying, but Ace Attorney, except instead of the
Yeah.
courtroom element, we've got the horror element
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and I love Ace Attorney, and I'm a fan of
You
horror games,
do.
so you'd think this is something I should definitely dig into. Maybe now I will finally,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it
because
looks pretty
this is brand
cool.
new, right?
Yes, this is a new entry, which is the first new entry in, I think it's 30 plus years or something, right? Because those two that came to the Switch in 2021 were remasters or remakes of the original two. So it's the
Hmm.
first new entry in the series in a very long time, which is why it's kind of exciting. And I guess why Nintendo did that little teaser. And like you said, it was not something they would necessarily push a third party game that way, but or with the marketing. But because it's a Nintendo developed and published kind of thing, and it's the revamp of an old series, they made a bit of a big deal about it. And it got everyone talking. That teaser certainly got, I mean, it got us
Yeah,
talking, and I saw a lot of chatter on the internet. And this week as well, when they released the kind of full details. Now, most people I've seen are pretty positive about it and like pretty excited. Some people are a bit like, "Oh, this isn't for me," but that's fine. It's not going to be for everybody. It is a kind of cartoony style, or an anime style, I would say, to the
yeah,
to the game, which looks, I think it looks awesome. Looks very Japanese, with the horror elements, like you said. It's a good mix, I think. It'll be very interesting. I do like visual novels. I do quite enjoy those from time to time. I think they're nice, sort of a departure from, you know, JRPGs or action-based games. These are a bit more, I don't know, they're not relaxing exactly. There's a lot of reading, like you said, but it's just a little bit different formula. And I think Trevor's also a fan of visual novels, from my understanding, or at least point and clicks. So yeah, it would be interesting to see how it does. Like you said, if it's well received, and it comes out on August the 29th. So next month, not even that long to go.
yeah.
And we're, we're working on our next issue of the Pure Nintendo magazine, and I do, how we do a little two-page spread on the upcoming games. I had just done that during the week. I'd just done that layout, and then this got announced. So I'm like, oh, I probably should stick that in because it's kind of a big deal. So, well, it's a Nintendo game, right? So it needs to probably be in that list.
Yeah,
I had to,
back to the layout.
yeah, yeah, and it's cool. I like the purple kind of colors of the title screen. It's got I think he's some sort of private investigator, the main guy, and he works with the police to solve this case of the smiling man. And it's apparently the mystery is something along the lines of people are found dead, because it is a horror, and they have these paper bags in their faces with the smiley face drawn on. But they're just not sure. There's an urban legend about the smiling man who's like a serial killer who does this. And is it in fact real? Is it the serial killer, or is there something else sinister going on? So yeah, it's a bit of a mystery, a murder mystery in that sense. So it could be interesting. Could be
Yeah,
interesting. Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I like that they tie it in with the. It's more of a modern thing, I guess, but the way these urban legends kind of propagate.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an urban legend out there. So now they have to decide, well, is this someone who just kind of picked this up, or is the urban legend based on reality?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's a nice touch. I also like that. Well, I shouldn't say I like that. It's just something I noticed. But the previous games were rated T. This
Mm-hmm.
one is rated M, 17 plus here in the
Mm.
US for blood, language, and violence. So it sounds like it's going to get a little more
Yeah.
intense than the
Yeah.
previous games.
Definitely. Right. Yes. I didn't see that the previous ones were T for teen. So yeah, definitely it's getting a little bit more into the horror side of things, or at least the graphic side of it. I don't know. But yeah, whatever it is. A bit more adult based, a bit more mature audience. Yeah, so that's really interesting. And I think we did kind of allude to this last week because we were talking about the teaser. And I sort of said, "Well, I don't think it'll take long for Nintendo to actually reveal what it is because you don't wanna lose that momentum." And then, yeah, a week later, they they dropped the full details. So I think they kinda timed it really well. I like that they followed it up pretty quickly. People sort of talked about it initially, and then as it kind of faded a little bit over time, over a few days or a week, bam, here's the full details. So they didn't make us wait too long. I think that was pretty clever with the marketing, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So looking
And
forward to that one.
one other thing that caught me on this is I watched the developer video,
Mhm. Oh yeah. Mhm.
and it is the original. I don't know his exact role, if he was, lead on the project for all of them, but definitely has connections to the original games that came out. And said that while they were working on the remasters, that's when they kind of got the idea to come up with a new one and put together everything they've learned since then to create a newer and better experience for these. And that got me to thinking of all these other times that Nintendo has remastered older games and brought back the original dev team for it. And now every time that happens, I'm going to be thinking, okay, great. Does this mean they're going to give us something new too? Are they're
Yes.
going to get the bug and say, you know what? Yeah, let's get it rolling again. Let's get the band back together.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I really love that. That video is really good too. It's all in Japanese with subtitles. It feels really authentic, because it is, it's made by a Japanese team in Nintendo. Yeah, and it just gives you a lot of details about how they, came up with the ideas and the story behind it as well. So yeah, it's a really cool video, that one. If you get a chance to check it out. Yeah, excellent. Well, very much looking forward to that one. Something very completely different in terms of, style like, maturity levels is, Pikmin 4, which celebrates its one-year anniversary this weekend. So the 21st of July, 2023, the game came out. Obviously, it's very different in that this is, I think, a G-rated game. It's, like, general, right? It's pretty open to everybody, this game. It's it's not like, I'm not saying it's easy, but in terms of the style, there's no blood or gore or anything like that. It's very
Yeah,
much a family-friendly title,
cute and
and I just
approachable.
yes, thank you, perfect. And I know you reviewed it last year, so I thought we'd have a quick, celebration of all things Pikmin because it is the anniversary. Literally, this podcast episode will drop on the 22nd, so for listeners tuning in, it will have just happened yesterday. So, we love the game, obviously. Kirk, you loved it, you reviewed it, gave it a very healthy 9.5 out of 10 at the time. We
Absolutely.
both yeah, and well deserved, and I think ended up being in our top 10 of last year, of course, didn't it? I can't remember
Hmm.
what number it actually made though, but I think it was definitely top 5. Was it, like, number 3 or 4 or something like that? I
I
can't
believe so.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, have you played it recently, I guess, is the first question, because I know we have a lot to play, and it's not something you may have come back to recently, but just out of interest, have you revisited this one in the last kind of few months or anything like that?
It's kind of a difficult question. I mean, the answer is no. I haven't.
Mhm.
I should say it's a question that leads to a bigger discussion. It
Okay.
is one of my favorite Pikmin games. I absolutely loved it the whole time I was playing it.
Mhm.
But because of the Dandori levels and the
Yeah.
night levels and everything, I played them. I had fun with most of them. I have no desire to go back and replay those again.
Right.
So this is a game I will never play again. Um,
Wow, interesting.
because I just don't want to have to go through that whole thing. If I could just push the story along and explore the world and do all of that we had in Pikmin's 1, 2, and 3, I
Mhm,
would, but I don't want all that extra stuff. And that's just me. It's the same with
mhm,
the Fire Emblem games. I will replay all of the Game Boy Fire Emblem games, Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn on the GameCube and Wii. If I get access to one, I can play those once a year and I'd be happy.
mhm,
All of the games where they give you all the social interactions and the dancing and the choir practices and the face petting and all these other things you got to do that just
uh-huh,
interfere with the core gameplay. I don't want to go through that again. So I
mm,
will not ever play those games more than once. I may love them the first time, but no desire to do it again. And it's the same with
yeah.
Pikmin 4.
It's interesting because you think adding these elements gives it more, like well, I don't know if longevity is the right word, but it gives you more to do for sure, but then to think that maybe it does kind of dampen the experience in terms of replay, that's an interesting kind of yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. You did the whole Olimar story thing, right? With
Yes.
Moss? Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. So it is like, yes, that's a really good point. And I think Pikmin 3 is definitely more replayable just for that very reason. Like we've gone back and replayed that a bunch of times because it is kind of just fun to go in and redo it. It's just you're just
Yep.
exploring, collecting things, obviously, doing the battles, and we do it. We did it for every difficulty level. So we went through and did it on. Is it just easy, medium, and hard? I can't remember what they call it in Pikmin, but we just did it 3 times, together. And that was the other good thing about Pikmin 3 is that you can play multiplayer, obviously.
Yeah.
Which Pikmin 4 was it had that the shooting element, but yes, something I would hope for another Pikmin, like if Pikmin 5 could bring that back, that would be great. But that sounds a bit negative, but, we're talking about Pikmin 4, we love Pikmin 4, it is a really, really good game, and we hope that listeners enjoyed it at the time or are getting back into it or getting into it for the first time. So yes, Pikmin 4, thank you for being a thing that exists because we loved it at the time. And it'll be interesting to see, yeah, if you go back and visit it in, 5 years' time or something like that, when you maybe want some.
Well, actually, you know what? When I saw that this was on the list, the first thing that hit me was how sad I am that we are so far removed from another Pikmin. We had to
Yes,
wait
I
so long
know.
for Pikmin 4, and I'm like, oh no, how long is it going to be before Pikmin 5 comes along and I get to do this all over again?
That's so true. How long was it between 3 and 4? Was it a good 8 to 10 years or
Oh,
something like that?
yeah, yeah, it was a big gap.
Yeah. That's pretty big because that was the Wii U. So
It was
yeah,
Wii
it
U,
was.
yep. One of the
Yes.
best
So
Wii U games.
yeah, it was it was very good, definitely. We had it on both the Wii U and the Switch, the re-release on the Switch.
Mhm.
Loved it. And Pikmin, I know Trev's not a fan, but I am playing Pikmin Bloom every day, just a little bit. And I like it. It has its place. It's obviously meant to encourage walking and community, and it's just such a fluffy little thing because you plant flowers as you walk, and it's about spreading the world with petals. And I just think it's such a nice little, like we're talking about Emio being such a mature audience themed game compared to Pikmin, which is very what did you call it? Cute and accessible.
Yes.
Yes. That's the style. That's a very different style, and so I just love that it exists, and I just love that Pikmin exist because they are adorable, they are cute, I really love them. I told you I got those awesome Pikmin vases or vases, I don't know how you say the word,
Oh,
in
yeah.
the yeah,
Mm.
in
When you were in
Japan.
Japan, yep.
Yeah, so every time I go for a walk, I try to find a flower and bring it home and put it into the vase, so yeah, it's just a little thing, just a little extra cute thing that Pikmin has done for my life, so thank you, Pikmin.
I still
Um
wish that I could get like little Pikmin to put out in my backyard, in my landscaping in my backyard or in the front
Oh,
walk, little like
yeah.
Pikmin kind of thing, so people come visit and be like, what's going on here? What are these
That
little
does
fellas?
does seem like an obvious thing to create, doesn't it? When you think
Yeah,
about it.
they're not
How is it
there.
not a thing? I wonder if we can make those and sell them. Maybe.
With the way Nintendo's been coming down on people for taking stealing their IPs, I can't imagine we'd get very far with that process.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yes, exactly. Well, you never know. Maybe that'll be something they'll come up with. But we haven't noticed anything to do with the anniversary online, have we? In terms of Nintendo hasn't kind of said anything that I've seen online. It hasn't been like, hey, Pikmin. Maybe over the weekend they will tweet or something. I don't know, but who knows? Um, I would like them to make a slightly bigger deal about it, but I guess I've got other things like Emio to worry about. Anyway, next up is Echoes of Wisdom, which we know is coming out in a couple of months. There was some news this week that it sounds like Link will be playable in some form in the game, which is very interesting and something we kind of speculated when we first talked about it after the Nintendo Direct. So it's good to know that this could, in fact, be true. And it came from, I think it was the rating of the game. What do you call it? The ESRB rating.
Yep.
So what they said was, they did the ESRB rating, and it's got an E10 plus. So it's relevant to everyone 10 plus, or made for people 10 plus to play.
Nobody dying with bags over their head in this one.
No, no, we certainly hope not. Um, So the rating talks about it being an adventure game and, playing as Zelda, dispelling rifts throughout Hyrule and rescuing Link, etc. But the interesting part is that it's sort of a long paragraph, quite a few sentences, and then it says, as Link, players use a sword. Excuse me. As Link, players use a sword and arrows to defeat enemies. Zelda can use a magical wand to summon creatures. So it specifically draws out that Link, I guess, is a playable character because it says players use a sword and arrows. So we kind of thought maybe because I think I even asked this question, what is Link doing during this adventure? Which led us to think, well, maybe you kind of swap between them or something, or maybe you start off as Link. Like maybe it's just that intro, like the scene that we saw in the trailer where Link has to fight Ganon and then he gets sucked into this other dimension. So maybe you just kind of start off as Link and then take over as Zelda, maybe swap between them. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what would you like to see or prefer, or what do you kind of expect, I guess?
I guess my immediate thought, and maybe I'm reading too into it, is that maybe it has something to do with the word echoes in the title.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
usually
Uh-huh.
something in the title that's a clue. So perhaps whatever that dimension is that Link got pulled into in the trailer that we saw is some kind of disconnected timeline. So
Ah.
you may control Link separately and he does something and then is able to leave something behind for Zelda to be able to
Ooh.
utilize or vice versa. So, maybe
Yeah.
I hope it's not a 50-50. I really want this game to focus on Zelda, especially
Yeah. Yeah.
just because we never have. And I was excited to see that we get to control her this time. But yeah, if there is some sort of interaction that way, that would be kind of cool as long as we're still, mostly using Zelda and her. Well, what do they say here? Some enemies can be defeated by being set on fire.
Yes.
So it's assuming that's one of Zelda's abilities, she's going hardcore pretty quickly.
Yeah, she is, yeah. She she's not taking any, what is the saying? No, take no
No,
prisoners.
take no prisoners. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't wanna mess with Zelda, that's for sure. So that's a really I love that actually, Echoes, the name Echoes, of course, we know that Zelda will be using Echo like, that's kind of her power, right? Like, she creates, objects well, she uses objects and kinda uses them as an echo to do certain things, so maybe, that would be cool if Link did something that she could use that he'd already done. Or what if there was like a statue of Link that she could control with her wand or something like that, but then you wouldn't be controlling Link, I suppose, and if that was the case. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. Unless when she creates Link, then you do get to control him separately. There have been games like that before, haven't there?
well, there
What am
was
I thinking?
yeah, I mean there was one where you controlled Link and Zelda inhabited like a was it a statue or something? And you could control her kind of as well. That was one of the DS games.
Okay, yeah.
The I can't think of the name. Trev again. We need you.
Oh, like Spirit Tracks or something like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Spirit Tracks, the one before it, I think, was the one.
All right.
But maybe both. But yes, those that kind of mini series there, yeah. So maybe it's a little bit like that, where Link is a bit of a spirit, kind of inhabiting something and kind of following Zelda around at some point. That would be interesting because it's like a reverse of what we've seen previously. Yeah, a lot of different options there. I mean, I think a lot of players will be just excited to see Link make some appearance. Like you said, though, you don't. I think you want Zelda to be the star. You think it's her game. She needs to be the star. So I'm fine with a little bit of Link action. That's fine, totally fine. I'm very very happy to see that. But I don't. Yeah, you don't want it to be 50-50. You want it to be mostly Zelda for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I
So
think so.
yeah, give her a chance. Let her spread her wings and show us what she can do with her burning abilities.
Yeah, and of course I say that before I find out how unwieldy it's going to be for me to kind of control her abilities. So
Yeah, yeah.
when it comes back to Link and I've just got an arrow and a bow and a sword, to be like, all right, let's now I can get to business.
Yeah.
Now I'm on familiar territory here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So very interesting. But yes, it's good news, I think. And variety is still good either way. The game it looks quite diverse in terms of Zelda's abilities, but even having a bit of a departure from that formula from time to time throughout the game or at some point will just make it even nicer, I think. So yeah. looking forward to that one. I can't remember the release date. Was that October? I think something like that. So looking forward to that one. And I'm sure there'll be more trailers along the way as well. This next piece of news is, I mean, we're getting a lot of interesting kind of Japan only games coming to the West. And this is a Game Boy Advance series called Densetsu no Staffy. Or is it Staffy, actually? The original. So these were three games released in Japan from 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. They were only in Japan, and now they are available on the Nintendo Switch Online, which is very cool. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to play it, but it's worth mentioning because they are quite well received and quite, I guess they like platformers, a bit like a Kirby kind of style of floating hero kind of thing. Um, what do you know? Do you know anything about this series? Because we kind of talked about the fact that Staffy or Staffy has made his way into the West in other forms at some time, but these three games themselves were only in Japan.
Right, and yeah, and that was my memory. I've never played one of these games. I definitely recognize the name. I couldn't remember from where, so I had to look it up, and I did see that in 2008. Although it actually there was a game called The Legend of Starfy in the U.S. That was the release in June of 2009. It actually came into Australia too in 2009 on the DS.
Ah, cool.
So I must have seen it somewhere, but I have never played one. So I can't go any deeper than that.
That's okay. Unfortunately, I have not either, but I've definitely seen it. I've definitely heard of it. And I love this little star-shaped hero with his big smile. It's very Japanese. It's very cute. And yeah, he's a star. I don't know if he's a star or a starfish. It's unclear, but he is a star-shaped hero. He does kind of float in his titles. Yeah, it just looks lovely. And it's published by Nintendo, but it was developed by, I don't know if I can say this. I mean, it's not a hard word to say, but I just will probably mispronounce it. But is it Toes or Tose or Tose? Tose anyway, is the developer. Yes. So it's just nice to see, and we always appreciate this when something previously only available in Japan makes its way to the West. It's really, especially because we, as Nintendo enthusiasts, generally speaking, we just love Japan and Japanese things because Nintendo is a Japanese-based company. And I think you and I in particular, we do have a little bit of an affinity for the Japanese culture and that side of things. So I love to see that sort of stuff make its way to more people, more players. More exposure is always a good thing.
Yeah,
Are you? Yeah. Do you think you would get a chance, or have you got an interest in trying these games now that they're
yeah,
available?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
I'll try that, but that's partly because, as you said, I think these kind of games, these sort of like Japanese style platformers, they're just so big and bright and
Mm-hmm.
bouncy. I mean, it's hard to not just stare at them while they're happening.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
I'll liken it to like the way babies will just stare at the mobile circling above them in a crate. There's so many lights and sounds and going on that you can't help be mesmerized by it.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like playing those kind of games that sort of mesmerize me for a little bit. They tend to not stick around with me for too
Mhm.
long, but yeah, I'll try it out and see what we got going on here with Starvey.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really nice analogy, actually. Yeah, the babies who stare at the mobile? What did you call it? Mobile?
Yeah, yeah. Do they have a different word in Australia? Mobile, yeah, mobile. Yep.
I think it's just the accent, my
Okay.
accent. Yeah, mobile. Yeah, very cool. So yes, check out Densetsu no Staffy on the Nintendo Switch Online. It is free if you have Nintendo Switch Online, obviously. So we'll check it out during the week and kind of report back on that one. So let's move on. If we're done with the news of the week, let's move on to the games that we're playing this week. And I am fortunate enough to be playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate, which we did talk about last week because it just came out during the week. So last week we were kind of anticipating it. This week we are actually playing it. So I'm reviewing this one. Hope to have my review up soon. Probably not before this podcast airs, but soon afterwards. And this one is a roguelike take on the Turtles. classic Turtles formula. So, traditionally we see the side-scrolling beat 'em up kind of style, and now this is kind of more like I guess it's like an isometric view. Would you call it that kind of perspective? Is that how you would
Yeah,
describe?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, which I think really works well actually. The top down or isometric view looks great and works very well in terms of the totals. So I really like the way it is it is set up that way. I love that. And I'm not a huge fan of roguelike, so it's a bit of a struggle for me. Not a struggle, but I need to be sold on this. I like roguelikes enough, like they have their place. It's just not my genre of choice. So I love the classic Turtles style. So I'm probably the perfect person to try this game because I'm going to need to be sold on why it should be different. And so far, so good. I have to say, the action is fine in the isometric view. First, let's start with that because the Turtles are all about they're ninjas, right? So they're always beating up these foot soldiers and other little kind of robotic creatures, the mouses, whatever, and kind of big baddies that are mutants as well, and that kind of side-scrolling, element that we know and love works very well for that formula. This also works well. You kind of have a very good view of the area. You can see enemies drop in. They kind of let you know when they're dropping in, and they throw their shurikens at you. You can dodge them. You can attack them. The attacks, it all feels very natural, and that part of it works very well. Initially, one thing that kind of jar- was jarring for me was that you can't jump. And one thing I always do in these games is jump. In Turtle games, I mean, like the side-scrolling ones. I jump and attack. That's like one of my moves because you can
Yeah, it's
dodge a bit
kind
more
of kind
easily.
of an important thing for ninjas to be able to do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So that took a bit of getting used to because you cannot jump in this game, and I'm like, oh, I can't jump. Like all the buttons do something else. You can attack, obviously. There's like a dash button. There's like a special attack and another. Uh, is it like a dash attack? Anyway, there's kind of one main attack button, which is like your weapons. Then there's three other attacks that charge, I suppose. Like you have to attack to build up that. You have to do your normal attack to build up these other attacks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The dash itself is a timed attack, so it will refill automatically after a few seconds. So that one's fine. But there's two special attacks that you have to kind of as you beat people up, the percentage of the meter increases, and once it hits 100%, you've got that attack available to you. So that's another kind of different take on how the turtles work. At least it's fine. I got used to it pretty quickly. And of course, as with any decent roguelike, you can earn yourself upgrades during your run, and these help immensely because you might get one that these special attacks will refill faster, for example, and that makes a huge difference because when you've got a lot of enemies around you, and especially if you're in one player mode, you can only attack kind of one on one sort of thing, and then you're getting attacked from the back, and then people are shooting at you, so you kind of need to dodge them. But if your charges are like refilling faster, then you can attack more. So yeah, these little. We're all used to this in roguelikes. You can choose right at the beginning. You can choose kind of a skill to use on this run. As you go through, you collect coins, and you then go once you die, you go back to the sewers because that's where the turtles live, to your base, and you can use these coins to purchase upgrades that are a bit more permanent.
Can
What
I
I
ask a
really
question about that?
Yes, you can
Because
please.
that's one thing I was wondering with roguelikes. I mean, one of the main elements is you die. You are always going to die. It's part of the process, and then you go back to the beginning. How do they explain that with the turtles? Like, do they actually die, or is there like some kind of setup where they are drawn back and recreated via some kind of special ooze or whatever to
It's a good question, and this one, so what they this the premise is that Master Splinter has been kidnapped, and he's in another dimension. So there's a portal, and really, you're not really dying so much as your health expires, and you're kind of sent back through this portal to your turtle lair, your base of operations in the sewers. Um, and then you have to do it again. So you're kind of progressing a little bit each time. It's interesting because it doesn't feel soup like the traditional roguelike is, yeah, you die and you have to do the whole thing again. And while you do, inverted kind of commas, die, the story continues. Like you go back and it's like, oh, we need to go back and get Splinter. It's not like there's a game over screen, you have to go and do the whole thing again. It's more like, let's upgrade our things, let's try again. And you jump through this portal and like Donatello, for example, because he's like the technical turtle, like he's the computer guy. He's like, "Oh, I wanna see what this, portal does." So when you're in a run, you might find a portal during your run, and he's like, "Oh, let's go into the portal because I wanna see how it works." And so that takes you to the next kinda area. So yeah, it's interesting, and each time your run is over in terms of your health runs out, you can change your turtle, if you want to change your character. So I haven't tried Michelangelo yet, actually. I've tried the other 3 so far. You can use these dragon coins that you collect to upgrade your skills, which, is obviously very helpful. So it's a little bit and I like this style because it's a bit different to what I think a traditional roguelike is, in that the story is still progressing, it's still moving along. So I'm not super far into it just yet, but I'm hoping to play a lot more over this weekend and see how it goes. But I'm really enjoying the story aspect because it is quite story driven. There's a lot of voiceover work, for example. The turtles all have voices. Splinter, even because he kind of materializes. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a Turtles game. It's fine. But and also this is very early on. He kind of materializes in the lair as like a not a spirit exactly, but he's alive, but he's in some other dimension, and he kind of gives the turtle some instructions, but he's voiced as well. So there's a lot of good voice work, there's a lot of good character work. The turtles, the animations look really nice. Like, I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm kind of digging it so far. I need more time with it to give a proper analysis, but definitely so far so good. I really need to play the multiplayer side of things, though. I haven't given that a shot yet. There is an online, element to it where you can play online, so really keen to give that a go and see how that plays. But just circling back, does that answer your question about how the runs work?
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah,
just wondering from a mutant turtle standpoint whether they had any memory of what had happened before
they
they
do.
quote died
Yeah, they
unquote and went back.
yeah, they do seem to, yes. It's more like they just get
Okay.
kicked out of that dimension that they're in, back into their own dimension, and then they can go back and have another go at it kind of thing. Yeah, and there's lots of, characters, if I know you're not hugely into the Turtles, but if you are a fan who's ever watched the shows or movies or comics or whatever, they talk about Metalhead, Slash is in there, you fight Leatherhead, the crocodile or alligator, um, Shredder is, of course, there, Splinter, foot soldiers, so it's very traditional Turtles characters. April O'Neil's there, I think. Did I see Casey? I'm not sure. Miss Jones. Anyway, there's a lot of cool characters there. So I like that they might have changed the formula to a degree, but it still feels very much like a total story, if that makes sense. So from that perspective, yeah, I'm quite enjoying it so far. Like I said, I need to play it a bit more, but so far so good. Fingers crossed. It's definitely well made. Like I said, the animation's really good. The voiceover is really good. There's a little bit of a loading time, but I think you kind of expect that with roguelikes, right? Because they kind of randomly
Yeah.
generate levels. So and it's not like a minute or 30 seconds. Like I count when I review games, I like to see how long the load times are because it's important, I think. And I'm talking like 10 to 20 seconds kind of thing. So it's not too bad. But yeah, if it gets to 30 seconds or more, that's when I'm like, I notice it and I think I need to address that. I need to mention that specifically because it's a bit too long. But yeah, no, this is not too bad. So yeah, definitely positive to this for this. Sorry, let me just rephrase that. Definitely positive so far. Positive experience so far. So looking forward to playing it some more and getting my final thoughts up. Did you have any other turtle related questions for me?
No, I think I did have a thought where you mentioned that you like the story, and I think something like that is really important in a game like this because
Mm,
looking at the gameplay screens, I mean, it looks like they could have just dropped any franchise in here. Um, because
mm.
we've seen games like this quite a bit, the isometric sort of multiplayer battle things. So
Yes.
if you are going to make a turtle game, then providing a good story is, I would think, really important for the fans to drive that along because the gameplay, like I said, be attached to anything. Giving it a good story is now going to make it feel like an actual turtle experience. So
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
glad that I'm glad to hear that they nailed the story.
Yes, no, me too. It does feel it gives it that authentic feel. And even though this, the style is different, it's because you're still beating up foot soldiers, even it in an isometric view, it doesn't feel, apart from the fact that you can't jump, it still feels pretty, like I don't feel out of my what's the word? I don't feel like a fish out of water, I suppose. I don't feel it doesn't feel too much of a departure from a traditional Turtles game, despite the differences. And as you go through, you unlock, you can, with any roguelike, you have runs, and during a run, at certain points, you get abilities that are only for that run, right? So you might get extra health boosts, or, you've got critical attacks that last for like 4 rooms or something, or, those kinds of things. So that's all in there. So it's very much a roguelike from that perspective. But it's fun. It's fun to see. And you kind of have to make that decision because you get like 3 or 4 options. You're like, oh, which one do I want to take? Do I want to boost my health, or do I want to boost my attack, or do I want to boost my critical kind of attack? Like, you have to make those decisions, and that can make or break your run. There's not a lot of health boosts around. Like, you don't, in a normal Turtles game, you see pizza lying around every now and then, and you eat the pizza and it gives you a health, it increases your health, or replenishes your health, I should say. That doesn't seem to be the case here. So the runs do end, kind of naturally, because your health eventually just runs out because you get hit a bunch of times.
Yeah.
There is a difficulty setting, which I appreciate. It's only 2, but there's an easy, and a standard, I think it's called, and maybe there's an unlockable hard one at some point, I don't know, but there's 2. There's like if you're new to roguelikes and you want a more of a relaxed experience, take the easy route. If you want something a bit more challenging, there's kind of this other standard route. So I like that. I like that there's options for those kinds of things, and Turtles games traditionally do have difficulty levels to choose from, so that's good. So there's a few little nice touches there as well that keeps me engaged, at least. So yeah, definitely into it so far. So we'll see how the rest of it goes. But let's move on to what you're playing, which is Megaton.
I
No, you say it.
Yep. Yep. Megaton Musashi Wired, or sorry, Megaton Musashi W Wired.
Okay.
This is a game from Level 5. They're the company
Oh
that brought
yeah.
us Professor Layton and Yokai Watch and
Yes.
many others.
Yeah. Awesome.
They'd gone bankrupt back
Really?
in 2000. Yeah. So I don't know the specifics of what brought them back or how, but they are here and they gave us this game. And I played maybe one. I think I played through one Professor Layton game on the DS, and there was a spin-off on iOS that I played. I never played any Yokai Watch, so I didn't know exactly what I was getting into
Hmm.
when I took on this review. And it kind of surprised me. It looked like it was just a big mech combat kind of game,
It does look like
where
that. Yes.
yeah, and it is. I mean, that's very much that's half of what the gameplay is. The the funny thing about it is I think it's very much geared towards people who would be really into mech combat, because the battles themselves are kind of easy for the most part, and they don't change too much throughout the game. The fun, for players who are into this, would be in preparing for those battles, because there are so many different ways that you could customize your mech. Just tons of things that you can do. And then when you think you've got it all set up, you end up going up against another boss where you've got to completely flip it and redo everything. So from that standpoint, if you're really into like fine tuning things, as if in the review, I liken this to the racing games that you could play. There are 2 types. There are like arcade games where you just race and you go around in circles and you're done. And then there are the games where you spend almost as much time in the garage as you do on the track, customizing your car, messing with the brakes, with the tires, all kinds of things like that. And that's sort of what this is. There is a
Right.
story, and it's a good story. It's fine. It's kind of a typical thing I've seen countless times before, I guess, where you've got like an angry boy. He's what's his name, Yamato Ichidaiji.
Uh-huh.
Um, it kind of a bit of a unfortunate past. He's angry. He gets into fights. He ends up getting pulled into this organization where we find out that aliens have invaded the planet and have taken it over, basically, and like they're running 99% of the planet. 1% of the people are living in these sort of like shelters, underground fortified shelters. Their memories of the invasion have been completely wiped clean, so they have no idea that anything's even going wrong. He,
Right.
being a good fighter, is brought into this group and it's kind of explained to him. Now he knows what's going on, and here comes the counteroffensive. And so we've got this group of young, because they're always young, it's a Japanese game. We can only have people
Yes.
fighting robots if they're under 17 years of age. um, and they're all kinds of different personalities. We learn a lot about them. There are side missions you can go on to learn more about them. So there's an awful lot to dig into as far as the characters and their stories, and of course the narrative is going to push forward as we go throughout, just interspersed with a with a lot of time customizing your robot and a lot of time out on the ground fighting. And one of the good things about the customizations is you could really pull off some really cool attacks. So, although I said the combat is basically the same throughout, you can make it a little more interesting by tweaking things and finding out, oh, now I can do this. And you just get like this really excellent, powerful attack that makes you feel like, yeah, I got this down. Um, so it's a fine game. My review's going up soon, and I ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would, but not in the way that I thought it would. So
Right.
just kind of a surprising fun entry.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't have guessed it was a level 5 game just by the look of it because it's so different to Layton, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
I think
fine.
once you start playing, though, the way the story's done and the way you're kind of like moving around this area where you're this sort of like world that you're in, it does kind of play out with the way you interact with people from what I kind of remember from the Leighton game that I played, where there's a lot of conversation and then you would get a puzzle. Here you get the conversation and the story and that kind of interacting with people, and now you're in a battle. So it does
Mm,
sort of have that feel to it. Like I said, I never played Yokai Watch, so I can't comment on any similarities with that.
no, me neither, but I think that's a bit more well, it's anime as well, but I don't know the gameplay style. I think that's the one where you have like a little is it a bit like Pokemon where you catch creatures in your watch instead of a Pokeball kind of thing?
I
Is that
believe
how it
so.
is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And these robots or mechs, is there one person, like one human inside a mech? It's not like Voltron where they're little
yes,
robots that go together, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's funny that you bring up Voltron. If they do have some tie-ins,
Really?
um, yes, one of which is, and I do know about Mazinger Z. So there's a tie-in with that, with other things called what Getter Robo, Combatler
Ah.
V, and Voltes V. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm
Cool.
not sure what those are, but yeah, Mazinger Z. There's a screen capture of him on the Nintendo site, so that's not any kind of spoiler or anything. But
Right.
always good to see that particular robot.
Cool.
Goes back to my childhood.
Yes. And what is the W? Megaton Musashi W? What is
If
the?
they
Because
explained it, I missed it.
okay, because it's a sequel to an existing game, or is it a remake? Do we know that at all? Because I think there was a 2021 release, was it, or something like that? 2020, from what I can tell. But this is like the wired. I don't know if it's a sequel or like the wired edition, if that makes sense.
I don't know. It might have something to do with the multiplayer component because there is
Ah,
one.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
like I said, I if that's something that I should have caught on as I was playing through it, then my apologies to everyone involved because I missed it.
That's okay. And also, it looks like it's a whole like is there an anime as well? Like they're calling it a multimedia franchise, so it's not just a game, is it? It's like an actual thing.
Yeah, and that would
Um,
make sense too because the cutscenes are wonderfully animated throughout this, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of tie-in and they had the same agency putting that whole thing together.
Cool. Yeah, it's on Crunchyroll. I don't know if you've heard of
Okay.
Crunchyroll, but that's the anime streaming service.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think there's like 20 odd episodes, 30 episodes, which is pretty cool. Maybe it was made, I think it looks like it was made concurrently with the game. Anyway, I love that though. I love a little tie-in, especially if it's made that way. Like if it's made to be an anime and a game like together, or it's not like it was a game that they made to an anime or vice versa. It's kind of like they wanted both of those things for this franchise, if you want to call it that, or
Yeah.
series. Yeah. So, and because it was made by the same people, like Level 5 seems to be behind the whole thing, including the anime. So, um, it's going to be done well, you would imagine. So, yeah. That's cool. I
Yeah.
mean, you're a
Yeah.
fan of giant robots and things like that, I suppose, because you like your, Godzilla. Is this akin to that or not really?
I wouldn't say it's akin to that. I do enjoy giant robots.
Yeah.
But again, going back to my childhood when I first stumbled upon Spectre Man, Jet
Yeah.
Jaguar is one of my favorite Godzilla characters. And
Yeah.
boy, I loved Pacific Rim when that came
Oh
out. We
yeah.
certainly had some fantastic robot fighting in that. I
Mm.
hated the Transformers movies, but I
Yeah.
liked the original cartoon. So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'm into it. And yeah, with the Mazinger Z, what I alluded to when I was a kid, that came over to the U.S. In the '70s as Shogun Warriors, is what they were called.
Ah, yeah.
And they were like
Mm.
these big 2 foot robot toys that you could get. And I had one of those, and it was one of my favorite
Cool.
toys of my childhood.
Do you have it in your basement still?
No, sadly,
No.
that one, yeah, I'll probably have to have a conversation with my parents about which toys they decided to throw away without checking with me first. Of course, or maybe
Yeah.
I broke it. Let's say I broke it. That
Oh, that could have happened,
I
yeah.
wouldn't put it past myself.
Yeah, there's definitely a place for giant robots, that's for sure. We won't go into the Transformer movies, but yes, the rest is pretty cool. So thank you for that summary there of Megaton Musashi Wired W, which is obviously out now. And the review is not, is it online or not yet?
It's not
Not yet.
waiting for edits. You know how it works.
Yes, cool. It should be online probably by the time this podcast airs. So check out Kirk's full
Yeah,
thoughts on that one. Thank you, Kirk. We're coming up to the end of the show, but we wanted to talk about some upcoming releases. Well, at least one upcoming release before we close off. And this is a game I can talk about next week in a bit more detail because I am reviewing it. But it is called Arranger, and I think, I wasn't even allowed to talk about it until today. Anyway, there was an embargo. But this is one that was I believe it was in the indie showcase that Nintendo did a few months ago. I think it was highlighted there. So it's an RPG, but it's an RPG with a bit of a difference. It's kind of got sliding tiles that move around, and you have to use those. It's a top-down perspective, and your little character doesn't move per se. The tiles under you move, and you move with them, and you use that to kind of solve puzzles and defeat enemies. Now, I haven't played it yet. So I'm about to begin playing this one. So I'm not. This is not a review or a endorsement or anything like that. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's a game that's coming out on the 25th of July, and I will be playing it during the week. So I'll definitely talk about it next week. But it does look really cool, and I was very taken by the trailer even back during that showcase. So I'm very much looking forward to playing it and giving you my thoughts next week. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it is out during the week, so it will come out before our next episode. But we will talk about it on the next episode. It just looks. It reminds me of a game I reviewed quite a few years ago, which had a character who skated through levels and you couldn't stop. You had to just go to the end. And that was a really unique mechanic that was really clever and fun for solving puzzles. This one, you don't skate, or you don't have to go to the end of the line, for example, if it's a tiled kind of grid based layout. The whole line moves and you move with it. And it looks like you can control how far it moves, if that makes sense. I can go one or two or three. And if you hit the side, like if you go far left, I think it spits you out into the right, which is how you get around things by the trailer. That's what I'm picking up. So, do you remember seeing this one? Is that something you recall?
I do remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the gameplay mechanic did look kind of cool to me. I like those sort of games that take the traditional approach to it and just find one sort of unique twist to add to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be curious to see what you think.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'll be curious to see what I think also. But yeah, it is a game that's coming out. Not a huge like it's not a Nintendo third party game, but it's not a Nintendo first party game, but they did highlight it during their showcase, like I said. So it's one to watch out for. We'll give you our thoughts though next week on the show, as well as a full review on the website. What else do we have to talk about today? Anything else on your mind, Kirk?
Well, there is one game. I got a press release on this, and I wasn't going to bring it up because it's not
Uh-huh.
coming out until 2025. But it kind of has the unique twist on things that you just mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yes.
a game from a company called Whisper Games have announced that they have a game coming called Paradise Duality Unbound. I don't know a lot about it. I watched the trailer that they provided, and I could see from the images what we have here. I don't think it's available on the Nintendo site yet, but it's sort of like got an isometric grid based approach to combat. The unique thing about this is, and you've seen it before, like in say Final Fantasy Tactics and all those kind of games where they're on this flat area that just seems to kind of like be floating out there, and the action all takes place in this. We'll call it a square. Sometimes it's rectangular, but
Yeah.
on this one, there's something going on underneath.
Right.
So when you do an attack, you're not only attacking on top, but also on the bottom. I
Oh,
can't tell if like things need to be flipped. Like you flip the piece and what's on the bottom is now on top, and then you attack, and you kind of have to flip around between the two, sort of like the upside down in Stranger Things,
right.
where
Yeah.
there's something going on just underneath them. Um, so it looks kind of cool. The graphics look nice. It's a very colorful, sort of like highly animated little world that they've created here. But it's definitely one I have in my folder over here to keep an eye on. So I'll be
Cool.
looking forward to that. It doesn't say when in 2025 it's coming out, uh, but see if you any listeners out there want to look it up. The game again is called Paradise Duality Unbound, and it's being developed by Whisper Games.
Excellent. That does sound very interesting. Yeah. That upside down just kind of terrifies me a little bit.
I suppose that's fair.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
was thinking
just
about
out of sight, but so close.
yeah. I was thinking about Stranger Things just the other day because it's obviously been a while since the last season. Don't know what's happening with that, but yes. It's, definitely a good analogy, though. That sounds really, really interesting. Yeah. So 2025, I mean, it's a good 6 months off, but good to have these things on the horizon. Um, yeah, what was the kind of reason for the reach out from the publisher? Were they just kinda giving you the heads up that it's been announced? Like, was it just
Yeah,
announced kinda thing? Yeah.
yeah. Just
Cool.
that the game had been announced. You know, they just like to get it on our radar, and they
Cool.
successfully have.
Nice. There you go. Now it's out there. You've heard it from us, as well, so keep that on your radar. Thank you, Kirk. That's excellent. Love it. And I guess from that's about it for this show, but we'll wrap things up and say thank you to our listeners for joining us again this week. Thank you, Kirk, very much for joining me as well. If you would like to support us, we are on patreon.com/Pure Nintendo. As I mentioned earlier, we are putting together our next issue of the Pure Nintendo magazine, which it's a physical magazine we'd love to send to you and get it into your hands. So you can see all the great work that we've been hard at work getting ready for you. We are also on social media, so please feel free to follow us at Pure Nintendo on Twitter, Blue Sky, or Mastodon. We are what else do I usually say? I've just had a mental blank. I think that's about it.
What you know? What can I offer a correction real quickly too?
You sure can. Yeah,
I
go for it.
believe I referred to this game as Paradise Duality Unbound. It is Paraside. Get it?
Oh,
Side, two sided. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So yeah,
That's
I messed
kinda
that up.
cool.
Paraside Duality Unbound.
I actually really like that. That's kinda clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. That makes way more sense, and way more it's actually more memorable now, I think, as well.
Yep.
Parasite. Very cool. Do you know if it's a new series? It's not like a sequel or anything, is it?
I believe it's new. Yeah.
Cool. All right, awesome. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, listeners. Until next week, game on, everybody. Bye.